Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ji. Good evening, students. A lot of students I could see all over from central, north, south, western region, eastern region. So from all the locations. Very excited to see you all, students. To give you a brief introduction about myself, I am Deepak P, actually Deepak Jain. I am a chartered accountant and a company secretary. I have I was qualified in 2008, and 2008. After that, there was no GST that time. There was only service tax and customs. I was dealing in service tax and customs. Post 2010, I started my own practice as a chartered accountant. Then I started my practice as a company secretary. And since 2017 came in, before that itself, the institute selected few people as faculties for GST because a lot of members in the industry did not know what to do about the GST once it comes in. So the institute had a good drive under the aegis of the indirect tax committee. The GST department, the institute has a special wing for indirect taxes. So the committee of indirect taxes selected few people as faculties. So I was had the privilege of being one of the faculties with the institute, and my liking towards indirect taxes helped me to learn the subject in detail. And I've been a faculty with Board of Studies for the past, I would say, pre-COVID, I was there. Uh, from 2017 or 18, I'm there associated with the institute in this aspect. So, and I've been getting good response from the students. The initiative by the Board of Studies is very remarkable. I would like to thank the institute and the Board of Studies for this initiative, wherein through this online mechanism, we are able to reach out to students across India, and also the students across India can get access to all the students or to get access to all the teachers. That's a very good initiative. I would like to congratulate all the students and the faculties for developing this, and looking forward that we study together and understand this concept of GST in detail. This is a very happening field, very much a growing area wherein we are seeing that lot of scope is there for a practitioner in the GST. It starts from compliance, starts from registration, then compliance, then advisory, then litigation, then high court. So the extent of coverage under GST is multifold, and there is no limit for it. You could go across the board and learn a lot of things. So it all starts with small interest, whether you have interest in the subject or no. If you have interest, you could just start up, and this is the right place, having the foundation of GST at intermediate level, develop it at the final level, and explore this area of practice. In terms of examination, I think this is a very good scoring subject. I have had students who are saying that through indirect taxes and through GST, they've got good marks. So it is definitely help you to pull up your scoring level. I think Shefali would have already discussed with you on the examination pattern and how to deal with it. She would also covered on the subject aspect on the GST, basics of the GST. So we will not go back to the basics. We will start from the charge. Okay, we will start with the charge topic. We have time for today and tomorrow to cover on charge. There are two to three big concepts which we have to understand. So we'll take it slowly today, this being first class, so that you could get used to it. We'll take it slowly today, and we'll pick up our pace from tomorrow's session. But today also we have to elaborately cover a very important concept under GST, the charge. And coupled with the charge, we have something called as a reverse charge. Okay, so we'll cover the concept of reverse charge today, and the other concepts of charge will discuss tomorrow. So the important concept of GST is the supply. Okay, GST is levied on a supply transaction. When is charge happening? When there is a supply. Unlike under service tax that you provide service is charged, service tax is charged. And when there is a supply of goods, when supply of goods or movement of goods. So use the precise terms, it is sale of goods. When there is any sale of goods, then there is a levy of VAT. So these were the concepts pre-GST. Now, once we are under GST, we'll see what is the charge. Okay, the power to levy tax. Okay, for any legislation to levy tax, it has to draw power from the Constitution. Okay, you would have also understood that any levy which is or any charge which does not have the power is unconstitutional or it is illegal, right? Because the Constitution itself says that no tax shall be levied or collected except by an authority of law. So there should be an authority of law, and that authority of law should draw power from the Constitution. And GST also had to get that power. So there was an amendment in the Constitution. That's when we see the 101st Amendment Act, which was passed in 2016, made a drastic change that earlier only there was power to collect tax by the state government and power to collect tax by the central government. That's what we see that, right? There was always a fight between the center and the state saying that this is my tax and this is my tax. Now, luckily, that fight is not there because they have integrated, they have shaken their hands and said that, okay, कुछ भी transaction within the state रहेगा, तो आधा तुम्हारा, आधा मेरा. Half of the tax goes to the center, half of the tax goes to the state. So when we say that GST is levied at various rates, say at 5%. So what does it mean? It means that 5% is the total charge on the supply transaction. Of that 2.5%, 50% of that, if it is 5%, 50% is 2.5%. 2.5% goes to the center and 2.5% goes to the state. So there is a division which has happened in terms of taxation, that the state and center does not have to fight whenever there is an intrastate supply, that is any kind of supply which is happening within the state. There will not be any fight, and they've resolved that yes, state will get 50% and center will get 50% of the taxes which would be levied on an intrastate supply, right? Now, the basis for charge, we know that there are 4 pillars of taxation. Before we get into the basis of charge, there are 4 pillars of the taxation, that there has to be 4, even it is held in various case laws, that for any charge, okay, for any tax to be levied, there has to be 4 pillars. Okay, what are those pillars? First is there should be a taxable event. Second is there should be a tax rate. Third is there should be a mechanism for collection or levying the tax. And you should also define who is the person to pay tax. Okay, I'll repeat the 4 pillars. That is for any tax to be made effective. Okay, any tax which is getting constitutionally challenged, saying that this tax is unconstitutional. So they will go with this basic 4 pillars, saying that if these 4 things are there, then the charge is correct, even if one of the pillars failed. Okay, even if one of the pillars is not clearly defined in the law, then the levy or the procedure of the collection of the taxes itself is abolished, and the whole tax law itself, that respective act, will be considered as illegal or unconstitutional. So what are those 4 pillars? First is there should be a taxable event. Second is there should be a taxable event. Second is there should be a tax rate. Third is there should be a levy or collection mechanism. And fourth should be the person who will pay the tax has to be defined. If these 4 things are defined, then the law is correct. In our GST law, all of these 4 pillars are there. So to start with the first pillar, the charge. Now, what is a charge? Charge is occurrence of an event which triggers levy of tax. So the tax cannot be just levied in the air. See, that air is just passing by, I levy tax. Or there is a flight passing by, I will levy tax on it. ऐसे कल्पना मात्र से आपको टैक्स लगाने की कोई गुंजाइश नहीं है, because just by imagination you can't levy tax. Okay, even if the government wants to, it can't levy. There has to be proper mechanism that the charge should be based on a taxable event. The first pillar, what is that? There should be a taxable event. The occurrence of that event which triggers levy of tax. Okay, that is the event which triggers for a authority to levy tax is the charging event. In excise, manufacture used to happen. So the charging event was that manufacture. As soon as the manufacturing is completed, the charge used to trigger. Okay. And in our capital gains, you have done your income tax. Once a transfer happens, then the capital gain is attracted. So similar to that, in GST, we have supply. What is the taxable event in GST? Is the supply transaction. Once the supply takes place, then GST is levied. Rahul Jain, is my voice clear now? Let me just switch on the fan. Okay. So hope voice is better now. So what happens when is the levy in GST? If somebody asks you, you should know that the levy, the event is supply. So once a supply takes place, that is the time when the GST starts attracting. Okay. Now we have dealt in detail in your previous sessions what is supply. Supply could be of goods or services. So once a supply is established, then GST gets attracted. So that is the charging section. Now we know what is CGST, SGST, IGST, but for clarification and to have a level playing field, let us understand what is CGST. CGST stands for Central Goods and Services Tax, and SGST stands for State Goods and Services Tax. So if there is a Karnataka state, then they will have CGST and Karnataka GST law. Similarly, if you have if you are from the north, then you'll have Delhi GST law. So when you read your GST law, you'll have to go through the central GST and the state GST for now. Both of these is applicable on intrastate supplies. That is when you make a supply within the state. The CGST collected goes to the center. The SGST portion which is collected goes to the state. Okay. And a combination of CGST and SGST is called as IGST. IGST stands for, we are getting confused sometimes. Few people say that IGST stands for interstate GST. It is not interstate GST. It is integrated GST. Okay, because it integrates the center and the state. So it is integrated GST. It is applicable on interstate movements. Okay, so intrastate means within the state. जब within the state कुछ transaction होता है तब CGST और SGST लगता है, और जब एक state से दूसरे state में कुछ transaction होता है, could be of supply of services या फिर supply of goods, तब IGST लगता है. Okay, so IGST applies on interstate movement of goods or services, and it also is applicable on import transaction. So on any importation of goods or on importation of services, you have to pay IGST. Okay. And the IGST, what is collected is shared between the center and the state. Okay. So there is one question which I want answers from you all. I am in Karnataka. Now I am importing certain goods. Okay. And that goods, the seller who is from a foreign country, he ships it and it lands in the Tamil Nadu port. आपको पता है ना, साउथ में कर्नाटका इज अ डिफरेंट स्टेट, तमिलनाडु इज अ डिफरेंट स्टेट। ऐसा नहीं कि सभी मद्रासी एक ही है। ओके, इट इज नॉट मद्रासी। कर्नाटका डिफरेंट स्टेट है, तमिलनाडु डिफरेंट स्टेट है। अब जब मैं इंपोर्ट करता हूं, दिस कंसाइनमेंट इज लैंडिंग इन तमिलनाडु। फ्रॉम देयर इज अ मूवमेंट विच इज एन इंटरस्टेट मूवमेंट। इंटरस्टेट मूवमेंट करके इट कम्स टू माई फैक्ट्री इन कर्नाटका। नाउ फॉर दिस import, what taxes should I pay? Should I pay IGST or should I pay CGST plus SGST? IGST, yes, everybody is given me a correct answer that it is a interstate movement, or you have just told me that it is a IGST which is levied on this. Okay, very good. So you have understood the concept of supply very well. Yes, few people have said customs duty bhi lagega. Correct. Whenever I import anything, I have to pay customs duty plus IGST, right? On import, all taxes have been subsumed is what we say, but excise is subsumed, service tax is subsumed, but the customs duty is not subsumed. So customs will be applicable on this import transaction plus IGST. Now, if I import those goods in Karnataka itself, because there are some places in Karnataka which have ports like Mangalore, which is on the on the coastal region, it can import through a ship. So if I import it in Mangalore, which is in Karnataka, that is a intrastate transaction. On that transaction, should I pay CGST, SGST, or IGST? Which tax? Yeah, while you give your answers, there are some questions I would like to take up. Which tax is levied on export? Same tax what is levied on import, that tax is levied on export. But to give benefits to the exporters, because when you export something, you get foreign exchange, right? You get foreign currency. So any foreign exchange is good for a country. So exports are all exempted. So except certain goods on which exports has to be banned, those goods will be levied to taxes on a that is called export duty, which is again a type of a customs duty. On that transaction of export, customs duty will be levied, which is specified. Otherwise, generally all exports are exempted. Okay. So I have started getting answer for this on importation, IGST, then on further sale, CGST, SGST. So there is no sale, Mr. Ritu. I have imported it and I have moved the goods from the port to my location. Now you tell me what is the charges. So few people have started giving answer that yes, it is CGST and SGST because it is an intrastate movement of goods. Export is tax free, yes, but this is a transaction of import. Customs duty is charged. Yes, custom is definitely charged. The question is not on customs. The question is on GST, whether IGST has to be charged or I have to pay, because on import I have to pay, right? When I import any goods at the time of clearance at the customs gate itself, customs clearance where I have to file a bill of entry, there I have to make a declaration. When I make a declaration, I say that I am registered in Karnataka in the bill of entry. That is the document which allows me to clear goods. In the bill of entry, I have to mention my GST number. So I will provide my Karnataka GST number. and the customs officer will levy the customs duty and he levy the taxes. Now, this taxes what is to be levied, what taxes he will levy, right? So there is a lot of confusing answers. Few people are saying it is IGST, few people are saying it is CGST and SGST. Okay, so this is not how we should understand this. It is simple because on all import transactions, IGST has to be levied. So even if it is movement within the same state, that is not material because the main transaction is import of goods. You have imported the goods and customs is only a place for you to pay customs duty and get the clearance. Okay, it could be in Tamil Nadu, it could be in your same state. Because this is a transaction of import, on import we always pay IGST. Okay, understand this. Imports are always leviable to IGST. So in this transaction, when I import it at a port in Mangalore, I have to pay customs duty, and with the customs duty, I have to pay IGST. So IGST is what is to be paid in this transaction, not CGST, SGST. Okay, so always remember in case of a import transaction, IGST has to be paid. Now this IGST is again then collected, distributed or shared between the center and state. But for us, the levy or the tax what we have to pay on importation is IGST. Now, to bring a clear understanding on when to decide when it is a supply of goods or supply of services, whether you have to pay CGST and SGST, there are two things which you have to keep in mind. One is the location of supplier and second is the place of supply. So this is the location of supplier. Okay. This is the location of supplier and this is the place of supply. So if the location of supplier and place of supply are in the same state, okay, it means it is an intrastate transaction. So we've told, we have already discussed that on an intrastate transaction, CGST and SGST is payable. But when do you decide it is an intrastate supply is by these two factors, location of supplier and place of supply. अगर लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर और प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई दोनों एक स्टेट में है तो उसे आप इंट्रा स्टेट कहोगे और लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर और प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई दो अलग स्टेट में है तो उसे इंटर स्टेट कहेंगे ओके सो इन दिस केस लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर एंड प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई दोनों कर्नाटका में है ठीक है तो क्या टैक्स लगेगा वेरी सिंपल it will be it is called an intrastate supply and the tax levied will be CGST and SGST. ठीक है? Now one thing you will have to understand is location of supplier. ठीक है? कहाँ पे मैं registered हूँ for goods, that is the location of the supplier. For services there are some conditions because services हम देख नहीं सकते हैं. So there are some provisions under the GST section 12 and section 13 of the IGST law which says that this is the place of supply for the purpose of services. वो आपके intermediate level में नहीं है, but just to keep in mind that okay, location of supplier of goods is where the goods are residing, and for a that's the place of location of supplier and place of supply. The place of supply is the place where the goods are located, and place of supply for services is decided by the rules. Okay, and location of supplier is defined that mostly where you are registered, that is the location where you're supplying. So once you know the location of supplier and place of supply, you will decide that it is a CGST and SGST transaction. Now, I have mentioned that if this is Karnataka, we know that Karnataka is a state, but under GST law, state is also being defined. State under the GST law is defined to include a union territory with legislature. Okay, so you would have seen that there is a separate UT GST law, right? So UT-GST law is there. Now UT-GST law is applicable for these union territories. So जब यूनियन टेरिटरीज को लिए applicable है, तो फिर दिल्ली में आपको यूटी टैक्स भरते हो या यूटी में दिल्ली टैक्स भरते हो? एनीबडी फ्रॉम दिल्ली और पुदुचेरी? या फिर जम्मू एंड कश्मीर? Because these are the three states, these are the three union territories which also levies their respective GST. Why they do so? Aisha Patka, very nice. Thanks to learn. Okay, Aisha, you could recommend to the institute for the finals as well. So Rahul, your questions along with GST charge in India, is GST also charged in the country from which we import goods? When we import goods, we pay the taxes. So the importer pays the taxes, not the exporter from that country. He will not pay. We will pay it in India. For importing goods, we have to get GST. Yes, otherwise you will not get the credit. So on importation, you pay the GST and you can claim the credit also. So input tax credit mein aap padhoge that you can pay the GST and you can claim the GST also. Aisha Patka, sir, one doubt, how should we make notes? Will you give us time to make notes? I will share with you these presentations, but as and when we are reading, as and when we are deliberating, please make your own notes so that you could remember the pointers. And the recording is always available. But as and when we deliberate, we discuss on this, please make your own notes. And anyways, my presentation will be shared. Okay, Rahul Jain, for Delhi, we charge CGST and SGST. Why not UT-GST? Because जहां पे स्टेट नहीं है वहां पे UT-GST होना चाहिए. But Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir, Puducherry में CGST and SGST क्यों लगता है? It should be CGST and UT-GST. Correct. Vijay Raghavan and Neha have answered correctly that they are states with legislature. So, जब खुद का legislature है, then the definition of state, you know the definition of state already, guys. Delhi state definition is defined to include a union territory with legislature. So since these union territories have legislature, that's why they are treated as state for the purpose of GST. Great. And all other union territories are charged a UT-GST. Okay, let's move forward. What happens if the location of supplier is in one state, which is in Karnataka, and place of supply is in Tamil Nadu? Then it is a interstate supply. On a interstate supply, IGST is levied. We are clear with this. Now, extent of GST. To what extent GST applies? GST Act extends to the whole of India. Okay, Section 1 says that GST Act is applicable to whole of India. Now, what is India defined? India is defined as a territory of India as referred to in Article 1 of the Constitution. That is the whole territory of India. But it doesn't stop there because we have some more additions. It also includes its territorial waters. जो territorial waters है, seabeds. So whatever is the seabed, subsoil underlying such water, continental shelf, exclusive economic zones, and other maritime zones, as referred in another law, which is called as territorial waters, continental shelf, and exclusive economic zone and other maritime zones. So the act इतना बड़ा है तो अंदर कितना होगा? Basically, we have to understand that what is India. Okay, इंडिया का डेफिनेशन आपको शायद नहीं आएगा क्योंकि it is just for our understanding and not to read it. So territory of India, the India includes the territory of India, what we have, the boundaries, the border states, whatever is there within the borders. Then within the borders, you have the territorial waters that I will discuss in the next slide. So apart from the borders, a specified zone is called as exclusive economic zone. That exclusive economic zone is also India. That is, you could see the lot of waters, Lakshadweep. Okay, a lot of that is India itself because it is within the water reach of India. And also the airspace above is covered within the definition of India. Okay, to understand this, see, this is the land area. Up till this, we know that it is a land to hai India mein, correct? After land, up to 12 nautical miles from the baseline. This is called as territorial sea. So इसके ऊपर तो इंडिया का ही हाथ है. So we have the right up till this place, but then it also extends beyond this. Up to 12 miles from here is contiguous zone. After the contiguous zone, also we have an exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles from the baseline. Okay, so India is the baseline plus the territorial sea plus the contiguous zone plus the exclusive economic zone. So यहाँ तक is the definition of India, not only what we see within the borders. Beyond the borders, up to 200 nautical miles is also a Indian territory. Beyond that, if there's any transaction, those are called high seas, okay, which is common and not belonging to any particular country. That is a high sea, okay. Rahul, other students are all clear. There is no breakage of voice. Please check your internet connection. Okay, so that is the definition of India. Now, India CGST extends to the whole of India. SGST, that is the state GST, extends to the whole of that state. And we know the definition of state includes UT with legislature. And UT-GST law extends the union territories, which is of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep, Dadar and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu, and Ladakh and Chandigarh. So these union territories are covered under the UT-GST law. We understood the definition of India. Now let us get into the charging section, which is the levy. Okay. Levy section is section 9. Okay, section 9 says what? Section 9 says that we will read the section because once we read the section, that is, I want to inculcate the habit of reading the law so that once you read the law, a lot of your queries can get resolved. Because when we read the interpretation, then we are not reading the law. So whenever you read any taxation paper, okay, it could be income tax, indirect tax, GST, or corporate law also. There is a bare law, right? So read that law and then you get into the notes because the law itself can give you so much of clarity sometimes. Because we don't understand the act, then we go to the notes. But if we can understand the act, our base will be strong because these sections will be very important for a longer time. Because if some interpretation is there and we understand that, but the basis for that, if it is asked, and if we don't know the basic sections, like section 9, section 7, then a base is not strong. So I would request you to remember the important basic sections. Section 7 is supply, section 9 is levy. So what does 9 say? 9 is also not one section. 9 is divided into further 5 sections. That those are called as subsections. We'll read the first subsection. Section 9 says, subject to the provisions of subsection 2, there shall be levied a tax called as the Central Goods and Services Tax on all intrastate supplies of goods or services, or both, except on the supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption, on the value which is determined under section 15, and at such rates not exceeding 20%, as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council. The council here is GST council, and collected in such manner as may be prescribed and shall be paid by the taxable person. What a wonderful section. The 4 pillars of taxation, what we said, is all available here. It says, what is it levied on? It shall be levied. What shall be levied on? It shall be levied a tax called as central goods on all interstate supplies. What is the taxable event? On intrastate supply. That is first. Second is it's also giving you the rate that's the rate shall be at such rates as may be prescribed, but the rate should not exceed 25%, 20%. And then it says value on what value? Value which is determined under section 15, and how who should pay it and how it shall be paid. It shall be paid and collected in such manner as may be prescribed, and it shall be paid by the taxable person. So all the four pillars of taxation are available here. It starts with a clause that says subject to the provisions of subsection 2. So it means section 1 is not an independent section, it is a dependent section on section 2. So we have to read the section 2 and then come to section 1 to have better clarity. So we'll go to section 2. Section 2, subsection 2. Sorry, I'm using wrong word section. It is subsection. You have to go to subsection 2. Subsection 2 says the central tax on supply of petroleum, crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, which is commonly known as petrol, natural gas, and aviation turbine fuel, shall be levied with effect from such date as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council. So GST का चार्ज करने से पहले आप सबसेक्शन 2 में एक क्वेश्चन दे रखा है, वो बता रहे हैं कि ये 5 चीजों के ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं लगेगा. अब नहीं लगेगा, लेकिन कब लगेगा? It will be levied on a future date, which will be notified by the government. So basically ये 5 पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स की चीजें हैं. पेट्रोलियम क्रूड, हाई स्पीड डीजल, मोटर स्पिरिट, नेचुरल गैस एंड एविएशन टर्बाइन. जब भी हम पेट्रोल भरने जाते हैं तो एक राहत की सांस ले लीजिए कि उसके ऊपर आपको जीएसटी नहीं भरना है. ठीक है. सो पेट्रोल इज फ्री ऑफ जीएसटी. तो फिर प्राइस क्यों इतना बढ़ रहा है? डू यू नो दैट? Is it for just that crude prices are increasing, or is it something else? Section 9 पढ़ रहे हैं हम लोग. 9(2) itself is saying that you don't have to levy GST on these petroleum products. Motor spirit, which is commonly known as petrol, is one amongst them. फिर पेट्रोल के रेट 100 अगर सेल हो रहा है तो गवर्नमेंट को क्या बेनिफिट है उसके ऊपर? Inflation, okay, demand and supply, depreciation of rupee. Okay, all of these things are correct. What you're saying is correct. Because of crude prices, because of inflation, because of depreciation in money, all of these things, these are the reason why the petrol price is increasing. So you mean to say government petrol free में दे रही है? मतलब of course उसका cost है, cost लेके वो transportation करती है, उसका ही charge करती है, तो government को पेट्रोल के ऊपर कुछ भी टैक्स नहीं मिलता है. You would have read in your chapter 1 itself saying that what happens to the taxes which has been subsumed. All the taxes have been subsumed, but some taxes are still remaining. Okay. On petroleum crude, diesel, petrol, air turbine fuel, and natural gas, central excise duty is still levied because these are the mass consumption products. So on this central excise and VAT, the local VAT जो है state VAT, that is still levied on these products. ठीक है. सो अगर जीएसटी फ्री है तो गवर्नमेंट, ऐसा नहीं कि गवर्नमेंट ना खुश है, गवर्नमेंट तो अभी भी खुश है क्योंकि दे आर स्टिल एबल टू कलेक्ट, सेंटर इज एबल टू कलेक्ट सेंट्रल एक्साइज एंड स्टेट इज एबल टू कलेक्ट स्टेट वैट ऑन दैट. ठीक है. सो ऑन दे स्टिल गेटिंग द बेनिफिट. सो दैट्स व्हाई दे आर नॉट मेकिंग एनी नॉइज सेइंग दैट पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स के ऊपर भी जीएसटी लगाओ. सो देयर वर सम टॉक्स दैट वी शुड ब्रिंग इट अंडर जीएसटी. अगर जीएसटी लेके आ जाएंगे then the respective control of the excise and the VAT will go off. So they're just happy with it. But they've said specifically that it shall be coming into the future as may be notified by the GST Council on the recommendation of the Council. Okay. Let's come back to our topic on 9.1. So 9.2 has told that on 5 products, no GST. Now we'll go to 9.1. There shall be levied a tax called as central tax on intrastate supplies of goods or services. So whenever we make intrastate supply, we are reading CGST Act, so CGST lagega. So where is the power under CGST wherein it says that somebody was telling that on intrastate supply you have to pay CGST and SGST, but यहाँ पे तो सिर्फ CGST बोलता है. Okay, levied a tax called central goods and service tax. State goods and service tax को mention तो है ही नहीं. What is CST, Bhavika? CST was there before, which is called as a central sales tax. So before GST came in on any interstate movement of goods, there used to be levied a tax called as central sales tax. So if it was a VAT, if you make an intrastate supply, if you make an interstate supply, CST was levied. So VAT and CST is totally dissolved? No, except for these goods, it is totally dissolved, but for these goods, it is still levied. So question, why on an intrastate supply, this law says only a tax will be levied, which is called as central goods and service tax? Correct. Very good. So you have got your basics correct. So all my questions, I'm seeing very prompt and correct replies. The power to levy SGST is there in the respective states, and states can levy it. The replica of what we are studying in the CGST, same law. This law is applicable to whole of India, to all the states, and state specific SGST law is there, which has these same provisions. So if it is an intrastate movement here, you levy CGST. In the respective state law also, there will be a mention of intrastate movement, levy SGST. So both the acts combined together make it a joint law, wherein on an intrastate movement, CGST and SGST both are levied. Okay, so that's why you'll see that the rate of tax here will be half, there it will be half. It will always be half. It can't be that one is higher and one is low, then it doesn't work. It will always be the same, right? So on an intrastate supply, CGST is levied and SGST both are levied on all supply of goods or services, except on supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So 5 goods pe to hai hi nahi. Apart from this, there is a 6th good, which is called as alcoholic liquor for human consumption. On that, still what levies apply? Is it same excise and VAT, or is there some other tax on alcoholic liquor for human consumption? So good question. One person has asked, what happens to the UTGST? If there is a UTGST, intrastate, intra-UTGST, then CGST and UTGST will be applied. So wherever SGST is there, where a state is there or UT with legislature, there GST will come. And for a union territory without legislature, CGST and UTGST will apply. Excise and VAT, no, Subramanya Teja. Excise and VAT is applicable only on 5 petroleum products. But for alcoholic liquor for human consumption, what is levied? Rito Banerjee, state excise and VAT, double benefit to the state. Not possible. That will be very high. On alcoholic for human consumption, only state excise is levied. So that's why if you see that state excise gives licenses to liquor sellers or manufacturers of liquor, because they are still controlling the movement and the taxes on the state on the human consumption, liquor for human consumption. Okay, so VAT is not levied and central excise is not levied. State excise is still levied on this product of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So on this, GST is not applicable. On what you will pay GST? You will pay the GST on the value which is determined under section 15. So section 15 says that what is the value on which you have to pay GST, and such rates, at such rates as may be notified by the government. So since the rate of GST may have to undergo change at various points of time, so we don't want to put it in the law itself. So the rate of the GST on products and services is given to the authority through a rules. So the rates will come through rules because it says it shall be notified. So the notification power is there with the central board of GST, Central Board of Indirect Tax and Customs. They have the power to levy the rates so that you don't come to the you don't come to the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, you don't come to the parliament every time. Okay, parliament, you have to come only when you want to make some changes in the law, in the act itself. For rate, you don't have to wait for the parliament session to come in and all the states have to pass. So you can change your rate through the rules itself. It shall be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council, and it shall be collected. So it shall be collected in such manner as we prescribed. Again, this is a delegated legislation. So the law is made in such a way that you don't change the law again and again. Most of the procedural aspects, most of the administrative aspects, most of the aspects on tax collection is delegated. Okay, so the law gives the power, law gets the power from the constitution, law retains the power and delegates the power to the authorities to some extent. Okay, so this is called delegation. So the law delegates the power to the Central Board of Indirect Tax and Customs, saying that you can charge the rate, you can keep the procedure aspects, you can decide how to collect the taxes. And it shall be paid by the taxable person. So who will pay the tax? The taxable person will pay the tax. Now, very important definition of taxable person. What's the definition of taxable person? Any person who is registered? Yes, a person who is registered is of course a taxable person. But further it says a person who is liable to obtain registration. So it doesn't say only a registered person is a taxable person. Any person who is liable to obtain registration or a person who has already obtained registration. Say I have crossed the threshold limit for registration and I have not taken registration. So can I say that I'm not a taxable person? The GST 9(1) sir has said that it shall be paid only by a taxable person, so I will not pay. Can you say that? Correct. No, because the definition of taxable person is not curtailed to only registered person. It's the definition of taxable person says a person who is liable to obtain registration. Once you have crossed the threshold, you are liable to registration. So you better register and pay it. Otherwise, the liability will be on you because you're a taxable person. They have not used the word it shall be paid by a registered person. They've used the word it shall be by a taxable person, right? Taxable person is a person who is registered or who is liable for registration. Clear? So 9(1) also uses a word that it shall be levied at such rates. So rate is also delegated, not exceeding 20%. So jab delegation diya hai that you can levy it, but be within your limits. Okay? Don't levy a tax of 50% plus 50%, 100%. You can levy a tax up to 20%, matlab 20% center, 20% state. So maximum GST, if the government is very aggressive, it can make it up to 20 plus 20, 40%. Today, we have seen a maximum rate of 28%, which is 14 plus 14 on cars, some aerated drinks. On those products, it is at 14 plus 14, 28%, but it can extend up to 40%. So 9(1), 9(2). Now 9(3). So 9(1) and 9(2) is read together, and we know that on a taxable supply, we have to pay GST. Now we'll come to 9(3), which says that the government may, on the recommendation of the council, by notification, again notification, saying that you will get a notification wherein they will specify the categories of supply of goods or services or both, the tax on which shall be paid on reverse charge basis by the recipient of such goods or services or both, and all the provisions of the act shall apply to such recipient as if he is the person liable for paying the tax in relation to supply of such goods. So जीएसटी में क्या है, टैक्स लगना चाहिए, टैक्स तो लगेगा, लेकिन कोई छूट न जाए, क्योंकि when I'm supplying something, the liability is on me, on the supplier, right? अभी सप्लायर के भरोसे रहेंगे, देर आर सम अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड सेक्टर और सम सेक्टर्स हु डोंट पे। सो अगर गवर्नमेंट सिर्फ सप्लायर के भरोसे रहेगी, तो देयर बी लॉट ऑफ टैक्स लॉसेज फॉर द गवर्नमेंट, क्योंकि सप्लायर जो है ना, हर सप्लायर पे नहीं करता है। बहुत सारे ऐसे सेक्टर्स हैं जो सप्लाई तो कर देते हैं, लेकिन टैक्स नहीं पे करते हैं। टिपिकल एग्जांपल इज अ गुड्स ट्रांसपोर्ट एजेंसी। उसका काम है गुड्स यहां से लेके वहां पे पहुंचाना, उसको टैक्सेस की कोई पड़ी नहीं है। एंड दे आर सो मेनी नंबर दैट इवन इफ यू ट्राई टू रजिस्टर देम, दे मे get missed out. So the government has come up with this concept in 9(3), which is always there before also in service tax, called a concept of reverse charge. रिवर्स चार्ज मतलब चार्ज को रिवर्स कर दो। जब आप गाड़ी को गियर में रिवर्स करते हो, गाड़ी पीछे जाती है, राइट? वैसे ही टैक्सेस को रिवर्स चार्ज कर दो, तो टैक्सेस कम नहीं होगा, आपको कुछ डिस्काउंट नहीं मिलेगा कि रिवर्स चार्ज है तो रिवर्स कर दिया तो पीछे गए, नेगेटिव टैक्स पे करना पड़ेगा, ऐसी बात नहीं है। बात यह है कि सप्लायर जो पे करता है नॉर्मल में, रिवर्स में रिसीवर पे करेगा, ठीक है? राम ने लक्ष्मण को सप्लाई किया, ठीक है? तो मैं अयोध्या वाले राम और लक्ष्मण की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, जनरली दो लोग राम और लक्ष्मण हैं, उनकी बात कर रहा हूँ। राम इज अ सप्लायर एंड लक्ष्मण इज अ रिसीवर। राम जब लक्ष्मण को सप्लाई करता है, तो टैक्स कौन पे करेगा? राम पे करेगा, करेक्ट? बिकॉज ये सप्लायर है, ठीक है? सप्लायर है और ये रिसीवर है, ये इनसे गुड्स खरीद रहा है। तो इसके राम के इनवॉइस में राम बोलेगा 1 लाख रुपीस का गुड्स और 18% जीएसटी, 18,000 गवर्नमेंट राम को पकड़ेगी, बिकॉज ही इज अ सप्लायर। चाहे लक्ष्मण तुमको पेमेंट करे या ना करे, तुम्हारी रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है राम, यू आर अ सप्लायर। दिस इज द नॉर्मल चार्ज अंडर 9192। रिवर्स चार्ज में क्या होता है? ऑन स्पेसिफाई specific category of goods. It says that they shall specify, which means they will specify the categories of supply of goods or services, the tax on which will be paid on reverse charge. राम ने कुछ चीजें सप्लाई की लक्ष्मण को, और ये गुड्स या फिर ये सर्विसेज, हमारे लिए सर्विसेज काफी है क्योंकि हमारे पोर्शन में सर्विसेज है। तो राम कुछ सर्विस प्रोवाइड करता है लक्ष्मण को, तो गवर्नमेंट बोलती है राम नॉर्मली सेल्स टैक्स या जीएसटी पे करता था, लेकिन इस ट्रांजैक्शन पे लक्ष्मण पे करेगा। तो उल्टा हो गया ना किस्सा, गियर पीछे कर दिया, लक्ष्मण को पे करना पड़ेगा टैक्स, ठीक है? तो टिपिकल एग्जांपल इज अ लॉयर। राम इज अ लॉयर, ही इज प्रोवाइडिंग सर्विसेज टू हिज क्लाइंट लक्ष्मण। लक्ष्मण इज द रिसीवर। जीएसटी सप्लाई पे करते हैं, लेकिन रिवर्स चार्ज में लक्ष्मण लक्ष्मण को पे करना पड़ेगा ऑन रिवर्स चार्ज बेसिस। दिस इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रिवर्स चार्ज, ठीक है? Only registered recipient will go to the notification. Notification says that some places it should be registered person, it should be unregistered person. So various people are there on which GST will be payable on reverse charge basis. So this is the concept of reverse charge. Now 9(3) says on specific category of goods or services, taxes has to be paid by the receiver. Now, to specify this category, there are two notifications which have come up. One is notification for goods, one is notification for services. Now, this notification for goods specifies certain category of goods on which GST will be paid by the receiver. Now, this notification is not relevant for us because at inter-level, reverse charge on goods is out of the syllabus. But for services, there is a notification which is relevant for us, very much relevant. On the reverse charge for services, there is notification number 13 of 2017, central tax rate. Okay. notification number. Should we remember section? Should we remember notification? Important sections, important notifications, you have to remember. Okay. So reverse charge under notification number 13. Now 13, 3 connection hai. 9-3 notification number 13. 9-3 and 13 ends with 3. So the notification for 9-3 reverse charge is notification number 13 of 2017. Why I'm saying this? Because under 9-4 also there is another type of reverse charge. So that is a separate notification for 9-3. Notification number 13 of 2017 says that a specified class of registered person and who is the specified category of goods or services on which reverse charge will be applicable on services. Okay. Then 9.4 says the government may, on the recommendation of the council by notification, specify a class of registered person who shall, in respect of supply of specified category of goods or services, or both, received from an unregistered person, okay, pay the tax on reverse charge basis. So 9.3 did not say anything about registered or unregistered person. It just says that on specific category of goods or services, the tax shall be paid on reverse charge basis. यहाँ पे 9.3 में they didn't say that supplier is registered or unregistered. It could be anybody, that if you're taking services from those specified category of people, you pay reverse charge. 9.4 said that if you are taking services from a registered person, then you have to pay the reverse charge, but there are specific words. There are specific words. May, on the recommendation of council by notification, specify a class of registered person, not all registered person, a specific class of registered person who are in receipt of specified category of goods or services from unregistered person, then you should pay reverse charge. So if a person is there who's registered and he's buying from an unregistered person, should he pay GST? He should not pay GST, because if he is falling under the section of 9 subsection 4, only then he has to pay, or 9 subsection 4 mein zyada hai nahi. So 9.4 is not applicable for many people. It is applicable only for a real estate or वैसे लोग are developer. Only for them 9.4 is applicable. So the important notification and important section for reverse charge is section 9 subsection 3 followed by notification number 13 of 2017. Okay. If receiver is not registered person, then who has to pay tax under reverse charge? Supplier B is, we are talking about 9.3. So a category of service, a lawyer service, which is coming under reverse charge. Supplier, lawyer to register nahi hoga, receiver bhi unregistered hai. So फिर on each category of service, we have to decide whether it is taxable under reverse charge or exempted. जैसे lawyer का example मैंने बताया, lawyer का example, if recipient is not registered, then it becomes exempted. Okay. So each category of services, when we go in detail with this notification, we'll get to know. Meaning of nautical miles, there is a measurement, meter, centimeter, and feet, we know, right? उस measurement में अगर हम C को measure करेंगे तो then that will not be possible. So there is a different measurement which is called as nautical miles. ठीक है. 912 is on forward charge. 9394 is on reverse charge. Now there is another category called 95, which is the government may, on the recommendation of the council by notification, specify categories of services. यहाँ पे सिर्फ category of services and not goods. Unlike 9.1 to 9.4, we had goods or services, but 9.5 is specifically on services. The tax on intrastate supplies of which shall be paid by electronic commerce operator. So e-commerce operator agar hai, if such services are supplied through it, then all the provisions of Act shall apply to such e-commerce operator as if he is a supplier. E-commerce operator, general typical example is Uber or Zomato. जब मैं Uber से cab book करता हूँ, cab driver is providing services to me. right? Do I know the cab driver? I don't know. I have to reach out to him through a e-commerce portal, which is Uber. Uber will connect both of us. I have to pay taxes, correct? Or I don't have to pay taxes. The supplier has to pay taxes. अब cab driver tax pay नहीं करेगा because the liability of the tax, instead of the supplier paying it, if he comes to me, to the customer, through a e-commerce portal, then the liability of payment of taxes on behalf of the supplier is on the e-commerce portal. So जब हम मनी देते हैं, that money goes to the Uber account. Uber taxes पे करके उसका कमीशन कट करके बैलेंस अमाउंट कैब ड्राइवर को देता है. ठीक है. That's where the liability, since e-commerce operators have better control, better accounting, so and they are having all the records of the supplier, so they will pay taxes on behalf of the cab driver. Similarly, there are other e-commerce which are being categorized because they say that shall by notification specify the categories of services. So certain categories of services दिए गए हैं. अगर वो services e-commerce provide करता है, then e-commerce has to pay the taxes on that. Sir, but Uber add GST amount in customer bill, right? They will add because that customer bill is raised on behalf of the supplier. Okay, they raise a bill on behalf of the supplier and they collect the taxes from the customer and pay to the government. या गुंजन कुमार 95 में क्या समझ में आया? ई कॉमर्स को हिंदी में समझाना है. ठीक है. जब दो लोग रहते हैं, एक सप्लायर है, रिसीवर. आई ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन दिस इन इंग्लिश. फॉर पीपल हु वांट मोर एक्सप्लेनेशन, आई एम जस्ट गिविंग फॉर देम इन हिंदी so that people who don't understand Hindi, I've already explained to them, and people who want me to explain in Hindi, it becomes easier for them to understand. That's the reason I'm using both the language. तो ई-कॉमर्स हमको पता है कि जीएसटी कब लगता है, सप्लायर और रिसीवर हो तब. लेकिन इन दोनों के बीच में अगर कोई ई कॉमर्स बंदा आ जाता है, मतलब एक बंदा आता है जो दोनों को कनेक्ट करता है, सप्लायर और रिसीवर को. कैसे कनेक्ट करता है? तो यूज ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी. सो टेक्नोलॉजी के थ्रू वो दोनों को कनेक्ट करता है, उसे बोलते हैं ई कॉमर्स. तो ये जो ई कॉमर्स कंपनी है वो कनेक्ट करवाती है. अब सप्लायर जो सप्लाई करेगा वो टैक्स पे नहीं करेगा, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट को पता है वो जो सप्लायर है वो टैक्स पे करने वाला नहीं है. ठीक है. तो उसकी रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ई कॉमर्स को दी गई है कि तुम जो कस्टमर से पैसा कलेक्ट करते हो, ठीक है, उसमें से तुम टैक्सेस, कस्टमर का जो टैक्सेस सप्लायर को जाना चाहिए वो सप्लायर फिर गवर्नमेंट को देगा या नहीं देगा. तुम सप्लायर को जो टैक्सेस मिला है उसको गवर्नमेंट को जमा कर दो. ओके. सो वो जमा कर दो, फिर सप्लायर की रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी खत्म. अब रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी सप्लायर के सर से हट के ई कॉमर्स के सर पे आ गई. अब ई कॉमर्स सप्लायर के बिहाफ. ये बोलता है 95. ये कैसे मिलेगा पावर ई कॉमर्स को कलेक्ट करने का? पावर आता है 9 सबसेक्शन 5 में. ठीक है. 9 सबसेक्शन 5 बोलता है कि ये ई कॉमर्स वाले जो स्पेसिफाइड सर्विसेज रहते हैं, Amazon, फ्लिपकार्ट, वो नहीं है अभी तक, क्योंकि 9.5 में एक नोटिफिकेशन दिया जो हम डिस्कस करेंगे. उस नोटिफिकेशन में जो जो कैटेगरी ऑफ सर्विसेज है, सिर्फ वो कैटेगरी के ई कॉमर्स वेंडर्स पे करेंगे. ऊबर तो ऑलरेडी उसमें है ही है. ओके. कैब एग्रीगेटर्स उसमें है और वो पे करेगा. दैट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ 9 सबसेक्शन 5. रिवर्स वाला भी हिंदी में बता दीजिए. सेम जो मैंने ई कॉमर्स के लिए कहा है वही कॉन्सेप्ट है कि मैंने तो राम और लक्ष्मण भी बताया था, अब तो आपको इजी हो जाना चाहिए. ठीक है, फिर भी समझाता हूँ. जब राम लक्ष्मण को सप्लाई करता है, नॉर्मली कौन पे टैक्स करता है? जब आप दुकान में जाते हो, खरीदते हो, तो दुकान वाला ही आपसे टैक्स लेता है ना. रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी गवर्नमेंट को जमा करने की दुकान वाले की है. लेकिन एक आप इमेजिन करो, आप दुकान जा रहे हो, आप परचेज कर रहे हो, दुकान वाला बोलता है मैं जीएसटी चार्ज नहीं करूंगा, टैक्स आपको पे करना है, ठीक है। तो इसे बोलते हैं रिवर्स चार्ज। तो आप तो पे नहीं करोगे, तो इसीलिए आपको रिवर्स चार्ज में रखा नहीं है। तो उसके लिए एक नोटिफिकेशन है, नोटिफिकेशन में बताएंगे और समझाएंगे कि कब रिवर्स चार्ज में आपको पे करना पड़ेगा, जब वो ऑर्गेनाइज हो, जब वो कंपनी हो, जब वो रजिस्टर्ड हो। जैसे लॉयर का सर्विस कौन लेगा, लॉयर का सर्विस कंपनी के काम के लिए कोई ले रहा है या कोई रजिस्टर्ड बंदा ले रहा है कि उसका कुछ केस चल रहा है, तो लॉयर जीएसटी चार्ज नहीं करेगा। वो जो कंपनी सर्विस ले रही है लॉयर से, वो रिवर्स चार्ज पे जीएसटी पे करेगी। तो दिस इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रिवर्स चार्ज। Let's proceed further. What are the various rates of GST? There are multiple rates. I'd say the major rates are seven: 0%, 0.125%, 1.5%, 2.5%, 9%, 14%. So these are all rates under CGST. So the rate, actual rate is double of this. So when I say 2.5%, you will pay on a transaction 2.5% CGST, 2.5% SGST. When I say 14, it will be 14 plus 14, 28%. So there are multiple rates. So CGST is levied on all intrastate supplies of goods or services of both. Again, similar provisions are there in each state. So SGST also will be payable. So on any intrastate transaction, CGST plus SGST is the rate. Then on any interstate supplies, we have to pay integrated GST, and it is a culmination of CGST and SGST. Alcoholic liquor is outside the purview of GST, and CGST and SGST and IGST is not levied on these 5 petroleum products. Okay. Now coming back to reverse charge, like to give you a understanding once again, this is a case of normal GST payer. He is a supplier. Supplier is supplying to the receiver. Okay. He will charge him for the value of goods and he will charge him for the prices. Okay. Supplier will supply the goods and he will charge in his invoice the GST. That GST, what you charge in your invoice, will be paid by him along with the payment for the goods. So the price, it is charged here and it is paid by the receiver, right? But the responsibility is on the supplier, because in his invoice, he has to mention this. So he will mention in his invoice and he will pay the price of the goods as well as the value of the GST. Now, whatever GST he collects from the government, he pays it to the collects it from the customer, he pays it to the government. Okay. So this payment, I will do it to the government. This is a normal charge wherein I'm supplying and a supplier pays the taxes to the government. In case of a reverse charge, a supplier is supplying the goods and receiver is paying for the price of the goods or services. And then the taxes is not paid by the supplier, it is paid by the receiver itself to the government. So this is called reverse charge. Understood with this chart now? First charge is forward charge, correct. First forward charge and second is reverse charge. Now reverse charge mechanism 9(3) or 5(3), because if it is CGST, SGST, that is taxed under 9(3). Similar provision is there under IGST, which is called as section 5 subsection 3. Also on 9(4), similar provision is there under subsection 5(4). So this is 5(4). Okay, 9(3) and 9(5)(3) is on supply of specified categories of goods or services, and 9(4), that is the next reverse charge, the different type of reverse charges, supply of specified category of goods or services made by an unregistered supplier to a specified class of registered recipient. So here unregistered is one category. In 9(3), unregistered is not a category. Now, what type of goods gets covered? On supply of goods, we'll see that generally cashew nuts, BD wrapper leaves, tobacco leaves, raw cotton, lottery by the state government or local authority, or silk yarn, used vehicles, these are all there. Why I'm going so fast? Because this is only for your understanding. This part is out of your syllabus. Okay. Supply of goods under reverse charge is out of your syllabus. So that's why this is only for your understanding. Supply of services under reverse charge is there, and it is very much relevant for your exams. And the notification is the notification number 13 of 2017. How receiver pay the GST to the government directly? He can pay, he files a monthly return. So there he can declare that this is the value of supply which he's received on reverse charge. This is the service he's availed on which GST is applicable. In the GST returns column, there is a specific tab saying that this is the value on which I have received GST on which I have to pay. There he will pay it. Okay. Who pays the tax in case of 9(4)? 9(4) in case of builder. Builder takes any services from an unregistered person. Okay, because they can't take much supplies from a unregistered person. So beyond that, if they take, they have to pay reverse charge. So these builders pay taxes under 9 subsection 4. If receiver of goods does not pay GST to the government, then what happens? Very valid question. If the receiver does not pay the GST, then the government will still collected from the receiver itself, because supplier they cannot touch it, because they said that on a reverse charge transaction receiver only has to pay. If receiver is not registered, good question. If receiver, the liability is on receiver and receiver is not registered, then if it is cast, if it is the liability is put on him, then he will have to register and pay it. Okay. So like a lawyer services, they say is that lawyer providing services to a registered person. So the only registered person has to pay. If it is to an unregistered person, the liability is not there at all on him. But if there are some other categories, says that it's a business unit, or if it's a business, if it is used for any business, then we have to pay reverse charge. Then the person who is liable to pay, and if he's not registered, then he will have to register and pay. On whom reverse charge mechanism is applicable? Reverse charge mechanism is applicable on the receiver of service. Okay. Now I will not be able to answer your questions because we'll be going to a different sheet, which is the RCM notification. So if there are any questions, you could keep it on hold. And once we finish this understanding of this notification, then you could pose your questions. So this will go to the notification, which is notification number 13. Now I have developed a sheet. I will share the screen. Okay. Okay. Hope my screen is clear. So we'll go through the notification number 13 and see what are the categories of services on which GST has to be paid on reverse charge basis. Okay. So I've not gone into the serial number wise. I've gone into a separate order so that we understand the important reverse charge services first and then go to the other services. That's why you see serial number 1 is not there, because serial number 1 needs a detailed discussion. So let's go with the simpler ones first. Services supplied by an individual advocate, including a senior advocate or a firm of advocates by way of legal services, directly or indirectly. So what is a service which is getting charged under reverse charge? Services provided by an individual advocate or a senior advocate or a firm of advocates. So there is a distinction between lawyer and advocates. So any word what they use in the act or in the notification has to be clearly understood, and we cannot have our general knowledge thinking getting distracted there. Okay. We have to remember all these categories. Yes, we have to remember all these categories. So services provided by an individual advocate, including a senior advocate or a firm of advocates of legal services directly or indirectly. Who is the supplier who has to pay GST? We'll come to the explanation later. Supplier is an individual advocate, including a senior advocate or a firm of advocates. So he's a supplier. A supplier is a lawyer in this case, or an advocate, to use the precise term. So an individual advocate or a senior advocate or a firm of advocates. So these are the category of people who are providing certain services. So these are supplier of services, and the recipient of service is any business unit located in the taxable territory. Here you see the word usage of the words. It doesn't say a registered person, a business unit. A business entity located in the taxable territory. Matlab, a business entity which is located in a taxable territory, which is India. So if a person who is running a business, even if it's not registered, then he has to pay GST. How will he pay GST? Again through taking registration and then paying it. So it just says business entity. It doesn't say a registered person or a taxable person, which means it could be any business per entity which has even less turnover, fine. Below the threshold limit turnover, also fine. Still, you have to pay GST because it says any business entity. When you're taking any services from a lawyer for your business purposes, you have to be careful, because if you're unregistered, okay, you'll generally miss it out. So you have to register for the purpose of GST and then pay the taxes on that. What's the difference between an advocate and lawyer? It is like a CA and a CA in practice. A chartered accountant is a qualification, but for practice, you have to take a practice certificate. So a lawyer is just a lawyer. Once he takes approval from the Bar Council to practice law, then he's an advocate. That's the difference between an advocate and a lawyer. Okay, clear with the first thing? Now, what is legal services also been explained? Legal services means any services provided in relation to advice, consultancy, or assistance in any branch of law. Okay, a lawyer providing any kind of services could be in terms of consultancy services or appearance before court or any tribunal or authority. So all kinds of services by an advocate is covered. If he's providing this services, then the receiver has to pay GST. Now, what happens if it's a non-business entity? Where typical say, I want to buy a house and I am not into the business. I want to buy a house. For that, I want to get the papers checked. I'm going to the lawyer. On that, GST will be applicable. At least not on reverse charge, because the recipient is not a business entity. So if he's not a business entity, so फिर reverse charge नहीं लगेगा. Okay, but if it's a business entity and they're taking services from an advocate, then they have to pay reverse charge. Okay. Let's get into the next category. Services similar to advocate services, there are some arbitral tribunals. So if any services are supplied by such arbitral tribunals, they are providing through arbitration between the two business entities. Then any business entity located in a taxable territory who pays the arbitral fees, if they are a business entity, then they pay GST under reverse charge. Non-GST, non-business entity, not liable to reverse charge. If advocate gives the services under private limited, then RCM will be applicable. Good question. But advocates cannot be registered under private limited. So how we have code of ethics for CAs, similarly, there is some code of ethics under lawyers. So a lawyer, chartered accountant cannot practice as a company. So we can only set up as a proprietorship, partnership, or a LLP. So only these three are the permitted ways wherein we can practice. Similarly, a lawyer also cannot practice as a private limited company. Now, services supplied by way of sponsorship to any body, corporate, or partnership firm. Services supplied by way of sponsorship to any body, corporate, or partnership. Who is providing? Any person, and who is the receiver? Any body corporate or partnership firm located in the taxable territory. Okay, very simple. But let me push the question here. You understood this, right? So if generally we see that Paytm, right? So abhi bank ka license is under danger. Now Paytm is a company. So it says any body corporate. So Paytm is a body corporate. Now they have sponsored IPL, right? So this is the service of sponsorship. So services provided by way of sponsorship to any body corporate is liable to GST. Now Paytm has made a sponsorship, right? Now who will pay GST in this case of Paytm? Suppose Paytm makes payment to BCCI. So this they are saying under RCM. So what is your understanding? Who has to pay GST under RCM in this case? Good question, Rajiv. You said that GST under reverse charge is by a legal services provider is this and receiver is a business entity. What if lawyer is registered under GST? Will it change? There is no exception mentioned here. So if it's an advocate who is registered under GST, still he should not charge any GST. It should be the business entity who will pay the GST. So the reverse charge mechanism, please keep in mind, it doesn't matter that if the supplier is registered or unregistered, because the supplier category may you will see that it doesn't talk anything about registration. So if in this case of an advocate, he's registered and he's raising an invoice with the GST number, but he's not charging GST, or say he's still charging GST. So will the liability of recipient go away? No, it doesn't go away. Recipient still has to pay GST on that if the supplier is still charged, because the liability is on the receiver. The supplier, the receiver who's receiving the service should not pay the GST to the supplier, saying that this is not your liability. If I pay you, my liability doesn't get washed away. I have to pay it to the government, not to you. So the responsibility is on the receiver itself. So receiver has to pay it. Good point, Rajiv. Okay. So on our example of Paytm and BCCI, most of them are saying that BCCI is liable to pay GST. That is the confusion which I wanted to clear here. Services provided by way of sponsorship to any body corporate, then supplier is any person, receiver is any body corporate. Okay. So GST is on this columns, that is first, second, third column or the fourth column. It is on the fourth column. The person who is receiving the service. Paytm ho, if Paytm is paying money to BCCI, BCCI is getting the money. It's not getting any services. It is providing the services. Okay. Please understand who is a service provider and who is a service receiver. Okay. This is very important because you're getting confused on who is the service provider and who is the service receiver. BCCI is not a service receiver. Okay. BCCI is a provider. The person who receives money is a provider of service. Why will you pay money to me? Because I'm providing you something. Correct? If you provide money to me, it means I am not a service receiver. I am receiver of money. But here the question is a receiver of services. I am providing you a service. That's why you're paying me some money. So BCCI is getting money. It is providing marketing services, display services. Okay. Lot of their ads of Paytm is getting displayed at the venue. So Paytm is the service receiver. He's getting publicity services. So Paytm is the service receiver and BCCI is service provider. Normal charge, BCCI will charge GST and pay to the government, but this is reverse charge. So Paytm will have to pay to the government. Okay. So recipient is Paytm, not BCCI. BCCI, just because it receives money, don't get carried away that who is receiver of money is the receiver of services. It is always the other way around. Receiver of money is the provider of service. Okay. So in BCCI's example, BCCI providing services to Paytm. Paytm makes sponsorship payment, then Paytm has to pay the GST. Now, understand between the receiver category under 1, 2, 2, 3, and 4. Here it says business entity, but in case of sponsorship, it says any body, corporate, or partnership firm located in the taxable territory. So if an individual makes payment of sponsorship, okay, Ramesh and co proprietorship makes payment of some sponsorship, will it be under reverse charge? Anmol Patwa, if receiver of legal service is individual other than business entity, then no reverse charge, no forward charge, that is exempted. How to recognize there's a reverse charge? You don't have to recognize that. The law is already given. You have to see the notification. Remember the notification, legal services. Legal service aa gaya, reverse charge. Okay. Then second is arbitral services. Arbitral services, reverse charge. So you have to remember those categories. Yes, most of you have given a correct answer that if an individual makes payment, okay, then reverse charge will not be on the receiver. So Ramesh and co proprietor making any sponsorship payment, no reverse charge. The sponsorer, the receiving, the PCCI who is receiving the entity who's receiving the money, they have to normal charge on that invoice saying that this is your sponsorship fees and add GST and the liability will shift to BCCI. So wherever reverse charge is there, it will be applicable on the receiver. On any transaction which does not fall under this notification will be under normal forward charge. Clear? So मैंने एग्जांपल दिया पेटीएम का, पेटीएम पे करेगा. अगर पेटीएम की जगह अगर प्रोप्राइटर रहेगा तो प्रोप्राइटर रिवर्स चार्ज पे नहीं करेगा. जो सप्लायर है वो उसके स्पॉन्सरिंग इनवॉइस में जीएसटी कलेक्ट करके सप्लायर गवर्नमेंट को पे करेगा. ठीक है. Good, Pranita. How is the practical sense government know if RCM is paid or no? See, we follow a system of self-assessment. So when you make a supply, also this question will come that when I make a supply, how will the government know that I paid the GST? So the government believes in self-assessment basis, saying that if you are making, we have given you the law. Now a taxpayer is doing a self-assessment. He's filing his returns. All the transactions he will mention in the returns. So a supplier, whatever sales he makes, he will mention. And if he is liable to GST, we have given the notification. If he is liable to GST under reverse charge, that he will mention it and pay it. If he does not pay, then there is a audit and assessment and other things wherein they can identify and do scrutiny of the books of accounts of the taxpayer, and then they can collect the taxes. But in a normal situation, the taxpayer is expected to know the law and disclose the transaction on which he has to pay reverse charge. It is understood that under reverse charge, recipient pays the tax. We are discussing the situation where recipient pays the tax. But what is the reason behind why the recipient is paying tax instead of supplying? That is the concept of reverse charge. So your answer lies in your question itself, Harshita. Saying why are we discussing this? Because the taxes has to be paid by the receiver itself. That is the concept of reverse charge. If Paytm is not registered, then it will have to register and pay. Correct. Okay. Now, this is on sponsorship services. We understood who is a receiver. Now, say other category, next category of services is, we'll take a break after this. So let's concentrate on point number 5. Services supplied by the central government, state government, union territory, or local authority to a business entity. Okay, any services provided by the government authorities on what kind of services? Renting of immovable property, services supplied below, which is services of post. The postal department service provide karta hai. Okay. All this are exclusions. This is here, it comes in as excluding services supplied by the central government, state government. If the central government, state government, or union territory provides any services to the business entity, then business entity has to pay GST. Okay. But these are the exceptions wherein on renting, government only will pay. Then on postal department, government post department only will pay. Services in relation to aircraft or vessel, the airport authority only will pay. And transportation of goods or passengers, when will the government provide transportation of goods or passengers? Through railways. ओके सो रेलवे पे आप देखोगे कि रिवर्स चार्ज नहीं होता, रेलवे टिकट पे ही जीएसटी लगा रहता है बिकॉज दीज आर द एक्सेप्शंस टू द रिवर्स चार्ज. Apart from these four category of services, any services which is provided by the central government, I have to pay GST under reverse charge basis. A typical example, government क्या service करता है? Government service करता है कि royalty. Even the royalty is tax, that's a separate argument. लेकिन अगर हम उस argument को छोड़ देते हैं कि royalty is a type of collection of all the services what government provides. You pay royalty to the government, you're a receiver then, and government is a provider, that's why it's getting money. So services of royalty for extracting mines and things, if the government collects royalty on that, the person, it says any business entity रहेगा because individual तो कोई mining करेगा नहीं, so it will be a business entity. I mean individual means non-business individual. If it's a business individual and he's into business, still he has to pay GST. A individual extracting mines and paying royalty on that, he has to pay GST under reverse charge basis, right? So only exclusions are renting of immobile property. Renting of immobile property exclude करके next example में next line में include किया है. But services of post, airport authorities जो collect करता है, airport authority of India, and railways and any kind of transportation by the government is out of GST, out of reverse charge, but it is liable to GST under forward charge. Then on renting of immobile property, services supplied by the central government, state government, or local authority by way of renting, they have mentioned it separately. वहां पे exclude करके यहाँ पे include किया because here it is payable only by a person who is registered under GST. So अगर government की जैसे यहाँ पे होती है कि बीडीए कॉम्प्लेक्सेस, गवर्नमेंट के कॉम्प्लेक्सेस होते हैं, उसकी दुकान आप खरीदते हो. Now, if you are a small person and you're not registered, then you don't have to pay GST and it is exempted also. But if you are registered under GST on the rental charges, what you pay to the government, you are making payment. It means you are receiving service. So on this receipt of commercial property services, a person who is registered under GST, he will have to pay GST under reverse charge. Okay. But for the all other services, you have to pay GST only if you're a business entity. But for rental, you have to pay only if you're registered. If you're not registered, you don't have to pay GST. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes break and catch up at 7:40. Thank you. So we were discussing on the supply till now on government services. So there are some questions specific to this. Sponsorship. What if proprietor is registered under GST and he's paid sponsorship? So if it's a proprietor who's registered and still paid sponsorship, the proprietor will not be under reverse charge because the category says body corporate and partnership. So only that proprietor, if he is registered, the GST will not be under reverse charge. The sponsorer who is receiving the money has to charge GST. If the sponsorer is unregistered, then that will not be liable to GST. Second question. In point 5, renting of immobile property is excluded. Jaspreet, yes. And the same is mentioned in point 6, yes, because the category of receiver is separate. So they have excluded from there and mention it over here. So renting of immobile property के लिए क्या कहा है उन्होंने कि if you are registered under GST, only then you will pay under reverse charge. Otherwise, you will not pay under reverse charge. That is not every immobile property. If the renting of immobile property is from the government, जैसे मैं इंडिविजुअल हूँ, I am providing some services of renting to a registered person or unregistered person. If it is renting of a property, then I have to pay GST in all cases, not the receiver, because this RCM is for renting from a government. So government की जगह पे अगर आप रेंट लेते हो तो फिर रिवर्स चार्ज अट्रैक्ट होता है. डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पोस्ट एंड फॉरवर्ड चार्ज और रिवर्स चार्ज एक्सक्लूजन्स में है. सो ज्योति, इट इज अंडर एक्सक्लूजन, सो इट इज अंडर फॉरवर्ड चार्ज बिकॉज द क्लॉज इज फॉर रिवर्स चार्ज. रिवर्स चार्ज का एक्सक्लूजन मीन्स फॉरवर्ड चार्ज. सो डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पोस्ट इज अंडर फॉरवर्ड चार्ज. But there is an amendment by service provided by Department of Ministry of Railways is also excluded under central government. No, not relevant for our exams. So I've not considered that. So whatever notifications comes after the cutoff date will not be relevant for us. Okay, so those were the questions on reverse charge. Okay, so let's proceed further. How's the Josh, guys? How are you feeling with the reverse charge? Till now, all clear? Are you with me? So we have not yet started the actual reverse charge. This is only a sample reverse charge because when I get into the main category 1, which I've left out, serial number 1, that is the detailed reverse charge. This is nothing. This is just sample. Okay. The next, good. Between state or utility, which legislature IGST will be levied? No. If it is between, okay, if it's between one state or union territory, then yes, movement between one state or union territory, IGST will be levied. Good. Good. Everything is clear. That's the way to go. Now, 5AA. It is inserted with effect from 18th July 2022. So this is a new addition in this RCM, which says service by way of renting of residential dweller to a registered person. Okay, if it is, again, there is a clarification in this. So even though this was a supply, so generally renting, if it is for commercial purposes, then you pay GST. But if it's for residential purposes, you don't pay GST. But this was a category which came in and said that service by way of renting of a residential dwelling if provided to a registered person. So if you are providing a house to a registered person, then he has to pay GST. Then the question rose, I am registered. Now, if I buy a house, on that house, should I pay GST? Because the service says so. But the government said the intention of this was not that if you are buying a house, but you're staying for residential purposes, no GST. Residential dwelling to a registered person means if you're using for your business purposes, okay, then it will be liable for reverse charge. Because the landlord will not register because he's only into rental business and his rentals will be below the threshold limit of 40 lakhs. For services, it is 40 lakhs. For goods, it is 20 lakhs. So he will not be registered, but the person who is taking this property, residential property for his business use, is using it for his business, so he has to pay under reverse charge, is what the government is saying. But if you use it for residential purposes, no GST. Prashant, please ask your question again. Next category of services is very much relevant, is director services. Services supplied by a director of a company or a body corporate of a company or a body corporate to the said company or a body corporate. So a director providing services to the company, then the supplier of service is director and receiver is the corporate. So receiver has to pay. Now, there are some clarification on this. We'll come to that, but kindly understand that services by a director to the company could be that he's an employee of the company. So if he's an employee, then it is excluded because we will see in Schedule 3, you would have seen, no? Schedule 3, services provided by an employee to the employer is excluded, right? Services by employee to employer is under the no Schedule 3, so no GST on that. But if a director provides services not in his capacity as a director, if he's an employee, a managing director is an employee of the company and he's withdrawing salary, on that no GST. But if he's doing other things, like he's bringing businesses, he's providing from professional services, or the typical example is if he's attending board meeting and for attending that board meeting itself is charging. Like an independent director, he is not part of the company. He's not a managing director. He's not an employee. He charges for attending the board meetings. This is in law terms, it is called as sitting fees. On this sitting fees, GST will be payable by the company on reverse charge basis. 5AA को हिंदी में समझा दो. 5A ठीक है. 5A इज जब आप गवर्नमेंट की जगह भाड़े पे लेते हो और वहां पे आप बिजनेस चलाते हो, तो फिर आपको रिवर्स चार्ज पे करना पड़ेगा अगर आप रजिस्टर्ड हो तो. अगर आप रजिस्टर्ड नहीं हो, फिर भी आप बिजनेस तो चला रहे हो और आपका लिमिट रजिस्ट्रेशन के नीचे है, तो आपको जीएसटी रिवर्स चार्ज पे भरने की जरूरत नहीं है. ठीक है, आपको रिवर्स चार्ज पे करने की जरूरत नहीं है. लेकिन आप बिजनेसमैन हो तो भी आपको जीएसटी पे करने की जरूरत नहीं, क्योंकि कैटेगरी जो लिखा है एनी पर्सन रजिस्टर्ड अंडर जीएसटी. ठीक है, दैट इज 5A. 5AA क्या बोलता है, अगर आप भाड़े पे एक घर लेते हो तो आपको जीएसटी पे करने की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि आप रहने के लिए ले रहे हो. लेकिन रहने के लिए जब आप ले रहे हो लेकिन उसको बिजनेस के लिए यूज कर रहे हो, तो फिर आपको जीएसटी पे करना पड़ेगा अंडर रिवर्स चार्ज. जो भाड़े ओनर है, ओनर तो आपको जीएसटी चार्ज नहीं करेगा, क्योंकि वो तो समझेगा कि मैं रेसिडेंस पे ही दे रहा हूँ. लेकिन आपको पता है कि आप वहां पे बिजनेस चला रहे हो या घर चला रहे हो. अगर घर चला रहे हो तो जीएसटी नहीं है, लेकिन बिजनेस चला रहे हो तो फिर जीएसटी लगेगी. One time director. Okay, so director will come back again, not to worry, Pranita. We have a separate slide on that. In the course of employment is not supply. Yes, in the course of employment is excluded under section 3, so it is not supply. If director are providing immovable property to company, so immovable property is not a goods, not a service. आपके schedule 3 में भी दिया गया है. It is there in your schedule 3 that immovable property is not a supply. Okay, GST is on supply of goods or services. Immovable property is a land. On land, there is no GST. In case of sponsorship of Paytm and BCCI, who will be the recipient and the supplier? Paytm is the receiver and BCCI is the supplier. That's why Paytm will pay GST under reverse charge. So in 5A, the government will get both rent and tax. 5A, government will not get any tax because he will only get the rental. Taxes will be paid by the recipient if he is registered. So government will not get the taxes. So when the recipient pays, then that will go to the government. That's a different thing. But as such, the government will not be responsible for collecting GST from its tenants. So you mean except director remuneration or salary? Yes. Except director remuneration or salary, other things will be liable to GST. Perfect. Security services. So services provided by way of supply of security personnel provided to a registered person. So any person now, if I am providing security services, then it will be under reverse charge, provided the per company who's doing the security services, if they themselves are a company, then it will be under forward charge. Okay. There is a separate G4 security services. That's what we normally see. G4 security services, it's a private limited. So if it's a private limited providing services to anybody, the private limited will charge GST in its bill. But many security services other than the big names are run by smaller companies who are not body corporate. There will be partnership or there'll be some proprietorship concerns. When they are providing you a security services, they should not charge GST. The registered person, okay, it says here registered person. A registered person will be liable to pay GST. Clear on security services? Then there is exclusion which says that this security services provided to central government, local authority, government agencies or a composition dealer, on that reverse charge will not be applicable. Security service, again, I will repeat this, security services specifically provided to a government department or establishment of the central government, state government, local authority, government agencies who have taken registration, but they have taken registration only because they have to deduct TDS. Because the government has to deduct TDS, GST ka TDS jo hai, they have to deduct on services, on certain payments with the make. And they don't have to make any other registration because they don't supply anything. So if they're taking only for the purpose of TDS purpose, they have taken registration, they are also excluded. And a person who is registered under Section 10, composition supply, we'll come to that tomorrow. So a special category of registration is a composition dealer registration. If he's taken any special registration, then also no reverse charge, only for security services. Five A is only commercial renting or residential renting also. 5A is for residential renting because on commercial renting, 5A is only on renting of immovable property to a registered person. So it's only commercial renting, not a residential renting. And generally, government doesn't give a residential renting. Practically, they give only government. 5AA, any ceiling limit? No, sir, no ceiling limit. Okay. Now let's come into the next category, serial number 1, which was to be first, but we had specifically mentioned here because it needs a detailed deliberation. Services by supply of services by a goods transport agency. A goods transport agency providing any transportation of goods by road to a specified recipient. So who's a goods transport agency? A GTA is a person who's providing a movement of goods services. You want to use transport some goods. These are all generally industrial goods or goods which are used for your business purposes, that you want to move from one place to another, could be within the state or outside the state. You deploy the services of a courier. So if it is within certain package, you'll give it to the courier. Courier person will charge GST in a normal charge. That is not the question. The question here is on a non-courier company who is a goods transport agency. They pick up the goods and they deliver to your customer. Okay. The services of GTA is services which a person who issues a consignment note against this exchange of goods, because consignment notes is a very important title document. Okay. Because if the person who's having that consignment note can claim those goods, that's why a GTA is a very important concept. It is different from a courier concept. A GTA providing services to specified recipients, then GST will be paid by specified recipients. Okay. The recipient of GTA service. Now, take a practical scenario. I am a service provider. I mean, I'm a seller. I'm selling my goods to my customer. Customer says that you give it on a transport, I will take the delivery. Okay. So there are 3 people involved: the seller, the buyer, and the GTA. Now GTA has to get the money. Now who will pay him? Will the supplier pay or the receiver pay? Say in this transaction, receiver says you give it to him, I will pay it once he delivers the goods to me. Okay, agreed. GTA also agreed because GTA also has to agree, no? Because if he doesn't get the uh, price, then why will he deliver? But he says, okay, I will collect it from the receiver who will receive the goods. So it collects the goods from me, takes it on, and gives it to the receiver. So if the receiver in this case is a recipient of GTA service, because who is receiver? Receiver, if I pay, I become the receiver. Now, in the similar example, if the receiver says I will not pay, then the supplier has to pay to the GTA कि भाई पैसे ले ले यहाँ से goods लेके जा. Because I want the goods to be cleared, right? That's important. So I will get the goods cleared as a supplier, but I will collect it from the receiver. That's a separate thing. But who is paying to the GTA? He is considered as a recipient of the GTA service because the reverse charge depends on the specified recipients. If this recipient who is paying to the GTA is one of these category of 6 recipients, then reverse charge will kick in. Otherwise, it will not. Okay. So if you are falling under one of these 7 categories, then you have to pay GST under reverse charge. So a supplier of service is a GTA service provider. Now GTA could be anybody who could be a proprietor, company, or anybody. But if receiver is one of these 7 categories, then you have to pay GTA reverse charge under GTA services. Who are these category of people? First is any person who is registered under the or governed by the Factories Act. If you are registered under the factory, not under GST, you're saying if you're registered under the Factories Act or governed by the Factories Act, you are one of the recipient. Or if you are a society registered under the Societies Act, or if you are any cooperative society established under any law, or if you are any person registered under the GST law. If you are registered under GST law, that is sufficient. If you are registered under the GST law, or if you are a body corporate, once you are registered, most of the people will get covered. But if you're not registered and if you're a body corporate, then also you're covered. Or you're a partnership, whether registered or not, or you're a casual taxable person, then also, and you're located in a taxable territory, then this 7 category of people are called specified category. So when a GTA provides services to one of these, any of these specified categories, then the GST has to be paid by one of these people itself. Okay. Now, who is recipient? Recipient is the person who pays or is liable to pay freight for transportation of goods, and he is located in the taxable territory. Now, provided there's a proviso to this which says that again, if the receiver is a business entity, now government also can become business entity, but if the government is registered only for the purpose of TDS, because one category says that any person registered under the GST, now government is registered, so government का आप बोलोगे reverse charge pay करना, they will tell no, we have registered this GST only for the purpose of deducting TDS. Now you don't put us any liability on this. They said okay. So if a GTA provides services to the government and the government is registered only for the purpose of TDS, then no GST. Then no reverse charge. We'll understand this in detail through our presentation itself. Okay. So in case of a GTA, what happens? In case of a GTA service, if the, now there are again 2 rates under GTA. There 5% rate and the 12% rate. So if the GTA service general liability is 5% and 12%, why there are 2 rates, sir? Because government said you pay 5%, but I will not give you input tax credit, which means you pay a lower rate. 5% is a lower rate than the higher rate. So you pay 5%, but I will not allow the GTA to claim any input tax credit. So if you don't allow me to claim any input tax credit, then charge me high. Charge me low. Okay, charge you low. Then some person said, no, I will want to claim ITC. It's okay if you charge higher rate. Then said, okay, you take ITC, but you have to charge higher rate. So that's when this 12% came. So person who's claiming ITC, 12%, person who's not claiming ITC, lower rate. Fine. Now GTA wants to pay GST at 5%. Fine. Now, if he wants to pay at 5% and if he's supplying it to registered person, then reverse charge is applicable and recipient who pays freight has to pay GST. Because GTA is under reverse charge, they're saying, okay, you don't claim ITC. You give a declaration in your consignment note that you're not claiming ITC. Then if the recipient is one of those 7 category of people, he will pay under reverse charge. You don't worry. Fine. So that is this aspect on payment of GST at 5% without ITC. If he's supplying it to registered person. If he's supplying it to unregistered person, and if it is to a notified person located in a taxable territory. So if he's registered person, that's one category. If he's to unregistered person, then again we have to see if they are under specified 7 categories. Then again under reverse charge only. So first you have to see whether you are registered, pay reverse charge. Not registered, then are you under the 7 categories? Yes, pay reverse charge. If you are anybody else who are not under this registered, neither in the 7 categories, then it will be exempted. Then come to 12%. If you want to pay 12%, if you're paying to a registered person, again, this will be under forward charge, because if you're charging 12%, then reverse charge will not come. Okay. GST will be under forward. So if it is 12%, it will generally be under forward charge. Clear? This is confusing. Okay, I'll give you a better slide to understand this. Simple slide. Person liable to pay tax under GTA service where recipient is one of the specified recipients. Okay, so we know that those 7 category of recipients, we have to know them. Now we have decided this, yes, they are one of those 7 categories of people. Now registered GTA exercise the option to pay tax himself. So if he exercise to pay tax by himself, then he has 2 options. So GTA says, I will pay taxes, boss. I don't want the receiver to pay. He has option. Only for GTA, you have option. GTA says that I want to pay taxes. Okay, pay. You can pay at 12% or 5%. Simple. He has option to pay. Now, if he has option to pay himself, then he can pay at 12% or 5%. 12% when he is liable to claim input tax credit, it will be under forward charge. Person liable to pay GST is GTA. Then if he says, no, I will not claim ITC, I don't want this janjat of maintaining input tax credit, just take 5%, give me discount because you are from 12%. I will pay lesser rate, 5%, and I don't have to claim input tax credit, lot of things. Then, okay, pay 5% under forward charge, GTA will pay it. Okay. Now, other category is GTA says, no, I don't want to pay any GST, boss. I will only do GTA service. Receiver will pay it. So when the receiver pays it, that means GTA is not exercise the option and GST is payable by receiver. The receiver will always pay at 5%. And the person liable to pay GST is the recipient. Recipient will be the person who pays freight to the GTA. From this chart, have you understood clearly now? Saying that if it is under the GTA who wants to make payment under forward charge, it is 12% or 5%. If it is the recipient always 5%, 12% option ही नहीं है उसके पास. GTA कौन है? भाई थोड़ा attentive रहो क्लास में. Just now I explained who's a GTA. GTA is a goods transport agency. Goods transport agency means a person who transport goods from one place to another place on exchange of a consignment note. आपका goods लेगा, आपको consignment note देगा. He is a GTA. So एक place से दूसरे place पे आपका goods transport करेगा. Okay. So there are exceptions like how we have discussed that if there are government authorities who have taken registration only for the purpose of TDS, तो उसके ऊपर GTA का RCM नहीं लगेगा. Then Again, second exception is the supplier, that is the GTA itself, can take registration and exercise the option to pay tax on services of the GTA, and the supplier issues a tax invoice to the recipient. So it means first is if the criteria to see is the GTA giving you a tax invoice? Yes. तो फिर मेरे को RCM पे करने की जरूरत नहीं है. I don't have to pay RCM. But if he's giving me a consignment note, now firstly in that invoice also you should make a declaration saying that I am paying the taxes on this and no reverse charges payable. ताकि मुझे पता चले ना that I don't have to pay under reverse charge. Otherwise, how will I get to know that if he's giving a tax invoice and on that he is charging tax and making a disclosure that you don't have to pay under reverse charge. Second category is when I am a receiver and I'm getting a consignment note. तो फिर मुझे पे करना पड़ेगा. Now, if I have to pay, always it is be under 5%. Simple. This you understood now. Recipient is liable to take ITC or not? Recipient can take ITC. The ITC restrictor is from the good question, Avinash. The ITC restriction is from the point of the supplier, not the receiver. Receiver can claim the ITC of that. GTA will not opt for 12% but 5%. Pranita, not necessary. If he has lot of input tax credit, because they take lot of for courier services, at least for GTA, they use transport big lorries and all. On that, lot of taxes is being levied. So they may claim the credit of that. So they, based on their scenario, they can claim the credit and agree to charge at 12%. If both service recipient and receipt provider and receiver both are registered, then what happens? Then depends on the supplier. If the supplier agrees to pay GST, he will pay. If he gives the invoice, then he will pay. If he does not give the invoice and just gives a consignment note, then recipient will pay. Okay. Now the main question is, who is the recipient? Because there are three parties involved. One is the transporter, the supplier of goods and receiver of goods. If the receiver is falling under the categories, if the payment of the GTA, not the receiver, the recipient of service. Recipient of service means a person who pays to the GTA. If he is falling under one of these 7 categories, then he has to pay. What I mean to say is clearly understood through a flow chart. We will answer this flow chart. You will understand what I'm trying to say. Is my Excel sheet visible? Okay, visible. Okay, one pointer I want to give before we start this is I'll share my mobile number so that we could create a group and we could discuss the questions. Okay, in relation to chapters what we discussed, because most of the questions will come when you read this, when you go through your study material. So my mobile number, you could note down, it is 9886 111 814. So any questions you have, you post it and we could discuss it at that point of time. So that in the next class, when we come, we can discuss that. Okay. So in this case, service provider is a GTA provider. The consignor who is moving the goods is a company and consignee is a partnership firm. The person liable to pay freight amongst them that decide that the company will pay the freight. Okay. So person liable to pay company. Now, who is the person liable to pay GST in this case? Now, in all our scenarios, first is GTA. We have to see whether GTA is charging a invoice and charging 12% or 5%. So in all our scenarios, to understand the criteria of recipient, in all our scenarios, we'll make an assumption that GTA is not charging GST. He's only giving a consignment note. Okay, he's not charging GST under 12% or 5%. He's giving you a consignment note. So receiver has to pay. Now, in this scenario, you tell me who is the person liable to pay GST? Company, correct. Because the person liable to pay freight is a company, and company is one of those 7 categories. So the person liable to pay GST is a company, right? In second scenario, GTA provides services to a consignor who is a partnership, and consignee is a registered dealer, Mr. A. Person liable to pay freight is Mr. A. In this case, who is liable to pay GST? Company at 5%. Yeah, that was accurate answer. In this case, yes, it's company and it will be under 5%. Correct. Mr. A. Why Mr. A? Because he is registered, and a person who is registered is one of those 7 category of people. Second, in third scenario, GTA is providing services, consignor is partnership, consignee is registered dealer A, and partnership is paying freight. So in this case, who is liable to pay GST? In this case, partnership. Somebody is saying Mr. A. No, it can't be Mr. A because the person recipient, that's the main reason of this chart, saying that consignee is a registered dealer, so he has to pay RCM, not necessary. Who is the service recipient? Service recipient is the one who pays the freight. Your partnership firm is the recipient, and partnership firm is one of those 7 categories, right? So he has to pay. Whether it's a registered or unregistered doesn't matter because one of those 7 categories says body corporate or a partnership firm. So even if it is a partnership unregistered under the GST, still they have to pay RCM. Because here the question, please remember, it is registered or unregistered. Even if it is unregistered, they have to pay under RCM. Correct. Cooperative society, registered or unregistered, and he is the consignor. Consignee is registered dealer. Person liable to pay freight agreed to them. Person who paid the freight basically is Mr. A. In this case, who is the person liable to pay GST? Sarji, suppose in point 2, if Mr. A is unregistered, point number 2 में if Mr. A is unregistered, तो फिर क्या होगा? आएंगे नीचे, वो भी ऑप्शन है, आप बताइएगा आंसर तभी. अनरजिस्टर्ड भी नीचे है. Okay, question number 4. Everybody is saying cooperative society. No. Few people are saying cooperative society. Nahi, it is Mr. A itself. And since he is registered, he will be under RCM. Next. Cooperative society is registered dealer A, and cooperative society is paying the amount of GTA payment. In this case, what happens? In point number 5. Cooperative society at 5% because cooperative society is one of those 5 categories. Right again. Cooperative society, company A is unregistered, company B, and company B pays it. What happens in this case? Should a company pay reverse charge? You will get the notes and charge. Don't worry, Pranita. I will share with you this Excel, convert into PDF because I can't send the Excel. I'll convert this into PDF and my PPT also. Point number 6. Point number 6, company B. Correct. Company B, because company B, it's one of the criteria that body corporate registered or unregistered doesn't matter. Point number 7. Unregistered dealer A and consignee is a registered dealer. Now, person liable to pay freight is unregistered dealer. Question number 7, registered dealer Y. Okay. Registered dealer Y will pay. 7th one, registered GT at 12% or 5%. So if it is reverse charge, Anmol, if it is reverse charge, it will always be 5%. You've seen the slide, right? If it is under forward charge, only then 12% comes and the GTA agrees to pay. So, okay, you're trying to say in this case, GTA has to pay at 12% or 5%. Okay, that's one of the options. But GTA says that I will not pay. It's not compulsory for him to register and pay, right? Because reverse charge, we have to compulsory register and pay. But if the recipient is a unregistered dealer, even though the consignee is a registered dealer, recipient for our purpose is the unregistered dealer A itself. Okay. So in such a scenario, it is a exempt supply because recipient is not ready to pay, is not the category of person who wants to pay, and supplier is not registered, then it becomes a exempt supply. Okay. Yes, few people have given correct answer. Jyoti, Vaishali, Yashwani, lot of people giving correct answers. That okay, few people is giving correct answer that, and Ritu Banerjee saying that it is a exempt transaction. Yes, this is a exempt transaction. Just because the other person is registered, we cannot shift the liability to him because the recipient is the person who is paying to the freight, and unregistered dealer A is paying to the freight, so it is an exempt supply. GTA provides services unregistered dealer A and there is registered dealer Y. Same scenario in this previous case, but the person who pays freight is a registered dealer Y. In this case, who pays the RCM or is it exempt? Registered dealer Y. ये तो clear है. सब लोगों ने correct दिया. It's a correct answer. So registered dealer Y itself. Unregistered dealer A, unregistered dealer B, and the person liable to pay freight is unregistered dealer B. In this case, what happens? Unregistered dealer Y. Yes. In case of BTM is not registered, then he has to register. Similarly, here, no. Here it is not. That category is different. RCM, each category is separate. In case of sponsorship, we said a body corporate. But in this case, okay, he's not a body corporate. He's not fitting one of the categorized person. Okay, it is not a company. It's a dealer. It's an individual. So that's why he should not register and pay. Okay, Abdul Khan, there is a difference between that and this. It's an exempt supply in 9 is what is the maximum people saying, and that's the right answer. So it's an exempt supply. In scenario 10, company C provides services to a GTA who's unregistered, and consignor is company C and consignee is partnership. Company C is say register unregister. Who will pay the RCM? Whether company C or the partnership firm, or is it exempt? Company C, correct. Second is GTA is unregistered, unregistered dealer A, registered dealer Y, and person liable to pay freight is registered dealer Y. What happens in this case? Some people are saying partnership. No, not the partnership, because recipient is company C. The pay person who makes payment to the GTA is the recipient. Company C is the recipient. So in 10, 12% GST also applied? No, because if GTA pays, then 12%. Receiver, अगर recipient pay करेगा वैशाली तो हमेशा वो 5% ही pay करेगा. उसको 12% पे करने की ऑप्शन ही नहीं। 11 एग्जेम्प्टेड भी आ रहा है। नहीं, रजिस्टर्ड डीलर वही होगा, नॉट बी एग्जेम्प्ट। हाउ कैन इट बी एग्जेम्प्ट? बिकॉज ही इज अ रजिस्टर्ड। तो और वो रजिस्टर्ड डीलर फ्राइट पे कर रहा है, तो रजिस्टर्ड डीलर का आप स्टेटस देखोगे, वेदर ही इज रजिस्टर्ड, यस ही इज रजिस्टर्ड, वन ऑफ द 7 categories, so he will pay. Correct. You're bang right, Yashwani. That simple rule is that one who pays freight will be liable to pay GST. Correct. 12 exempt. Yes, because both are unregistered dealers. So it is exempt. Doesn't matter both who is paying freight. Unregistered dealer B is paying the freight and he's unregistered. So it is exempt. Great. So we understood the concept of GTA. Okay, similar to the concept of GTA. Now, GTA, one part we understood that one of the categories of person who is there under this 7 categories, his status will decide who pays. The general RCM category, this chart is very helpful, saying that if a GTA wants to pay, he will pay either at 12% or 5%. But if a recipient has to pay, then he will always be under 5%. I'll take some 15 minutes more. Please bear with me. We'll finish the concept of reverse charge to some extent. Now, what happens in case of how we discuss the concept of GTA? Similarly, we have a concept of renting of motor vehicle. Okay, renting of motor vehicle jab hoga. Well, everybody seeing okay, correct. 12 exempt, yes, everybody is saying exempt. If GTA pays GST at 12%, okay, if GTA pays 12%, it is always under forward charge. If GTA pays 12%, so if it is under forward charge, he says, then recipient status we will not see, right, Rito? So it is depending always on the supplier. If the supplier wants to pay, then he will charge, irrespective of who I am. But if I have to pay under reverse charge, then I will see my status. That's how it works. Now, there is a question of motor vehicles. Okay. Question under motor vehicles is that if you take any Uber, Ola, that will not apply this because for them e-commerce applies. And if you are giving a cab on hire, okay, saying that on I'm providing you a driver, you can use the cab for outstation travel for 12 days. Again, that it will not apply because there it is not that renting motor vehicle including cost of fuel. This applies specifically to a category called renting of motor vehicle including cost of fuel. Okay, if you are providing a package of providing motor vehicle with the fuel cost you're recovering as a bundled cost, okay, then this reverse charge comes in. Now, what does this say? This says that services provided by body corporate. Now, if this services are provided by a body corporate, if it's a company, then service is supplied to any person, then again 12%, 5%. So forward charge, always two options, 12% and 5%. Okay. Supplier availing full ITC, 12%. Supplier availing limited ITC, 5%. So in GTA, no limited ITC, no ITC or full ITC. In motor vehicle, full ITC or limited ITC. What is this limited ITC? We'll come back. But if the supplier is a body corporate, only then it will be under forward charge. Okay. Forward charge at 12% full ITC, 5% limited ITC. Okay. Then if the service provided by a person other than a body corporate, if it's a other than a body corporate, okay, it's a proprietorship, partnership, and the service is supplied to a person other than a body corporate. Okay, I am a proprietor. I am providing to another individual, could be a business person, non-business person, doesn't matter. I am a proprietor. I am providing my cars, including cost of fuel, bundle rate and charging. I am providing this, okay, wherein fuel is my cost. So generally outstation travels, when we go savari.com and things like that, the charge per kilometer basis, fuel cost is included. Such cases, when they provide this services. Now, if Savari is a unregistered person, is providing services to anybody who is not a body corporate, then again he will charge under forward charge, which could again be 12% full ITC, 5% limited ITC. Now, if this individual Savari.com provides to a body corporate, then the company body corporate has to pay under reverse charge. Okay, there is a difference between that and this. You have to see this charts again to not confuse each other. Motor vehicles very different. Motor vehicles, if a body corporate is taking services from another body corporate, then the service provider will pay. Clear? When it's a body corporate providing services, the body corporate only has to pay. Under forward charge, no option. But if it's a service provider is an individual, then again two options. If he's providing to a body corporate, then body corporate compulsorily under reverse charge. And if this individual is providing to a non-body corporate, always under forward charge. Only three cases. Provider, body corporate, always under forward charge. Provider, non-body corporate, receiver is a body corporate, always reverse charge. And the third category, non-body corporate providing to a non-body corporate, forward charge. Simple. Now, the question of limited ITC. You've said that full ITC or limited ITC. Limited ITC means you can claim ITC of input services in the same line of business. Okay. If I have to provide a car and I am having shortage of car, I am taking the car from somebody else, and that person will charge me GST. For that charge, I can claim the credit. Baki dusra credit nahi milega. I will not be able to claim rental and other expenses credit. I will not be able to claim. That is called limited ITC. If I can claim only that credit, that's also good. So to that extent, my rate will be 5%. But if I claim all the ITC, my rate is 12%. Clear with this? Now you have to understand the bifurcation between what is the service of renting of motor vehicle designed to carry passengers and service of transportation of passengers, because there are two services which you can get confused, saying that one is service of renting of motor vehicle with fuel and service of transportation of passengers. There also it is with fuel, because when you collect any passenger ticket charges, then also you don't charge separate fuel. In the ticket price itself, fuel is included. So what's the difference between that is given through an circular which says that when there is service of renting of motor vehicle designed to carry passengers, then you have a renting of motor vehicles to transport passengers for a period of time, where the renter defines how and when the vehicle will be operated, determining schedule, routes, and other operation conditions. That is a passenger transport service. But when you provide a car, you are using the car according to your instructions and your needs. So that is under the discussion of reverse charge. But if it's transportation of passengers, that is not under reverse charge. That will always be under forward charge. Car block credit. Yes, car is a block credit, Pranita. But if you use car for your business of transportation of passengers, then you can claim credit. So when we discuss ITC, car, when you use for business company, then it is exempted. But car, if it is used for transportation of that business itself, then it's a available credit. Any questions on this renting of motor vehicles? Yeah, in tourism, they provide bus car to individual. Yes, that is what is covered here. So if the tourism company is they are a company, then they will charge under forward charge. And if that company provides to an individual, they will again charge under reverse forward charge. But if they provide it to a company, okay, if a company is taking that car for his employees, then the company has to pay under reverse charge. That's the correct example you have given. So tourism, wherein they will charge the thing with the price. But if they charge, say, per passenger basis, that's what is this chart saying, that if they charge is for transportation of passengers, okay, then it will not be under reverse charge, it will be under forward charge, both under forward charge itself. ನಾಗರಾಜು, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ, ನೋಡಿಲ್ಲ ನಾನು. ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇದ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಳಿಸಿ, ತುಂಬಾ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತಿತ್ತು. If transport is used for service other than business, you mean goods transport agency? If it's a goods transport agency, only then that category comes in. Yeah. If the transport is used for service other than business, other than business, then if GTA is registered and he wants to pay forward charge, he will still pay. Please explain the case where supplier is other than body corporate. If the supplier is other than body corporate, then you decide whether you are providing services, you're as a provider, you're other than a body corporate. Then if you are providing to a body corporate, then the body corporate has to pay under reverse charge. If you are providing to non-body corporate, then you have to pay under forward charge. Okay. So the scenario is simple, that if it's a body corporate, reverse charge will come. But if the supplier is a body corporate, then it will be under forward charge. And all other scenarios, it is always under forward charge. It is only reverse charge if the provider is unregistered or a non-body corporate and you are a body corporate. Only in that scenario, you will pay reverse charge. Thank you, Mamta. Thank you, Santosh Nagaraju. So any more questions, please post it. We will discuss it tomorrow. Last question, Gunjan Kumar. Government supplier से 12% charge करेगा या supplier customer से 12% charge करेगा, और कौन ITC claim करेगा? कौन से केस में बोल रहे हो आप? इस केस में गवर्नमेंट सप्लायर से 12% चार्ज करे या कस्टमर? ओके, गवर्नमेंट तो कुछ चार्ज नहीं करेगा. इन दिस केस रेंटिंग जो प्रोवाइड करते हैं वो चार्ज करेंगे और वो गवर्नमेंट को जमा करेंगे. ओके. ये कॉन्सेप्ट क्लैरिटी हो गया तो दैट्स गुड. We'll continue this clearance because these concepts are very confusing, I would say. So with clarity and with in-depth understanding, if we understand this will always help us at the exam level. So any doubts, please post it. I'm trying to make it clear at the maximum. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Over.